When I turned 17, I arrived at my own birthday dinner, only to find that I had become merely a visitor at a table that once felt like home. The scents in the dining room remained my favorite, cedarwood candles blending with the aroma of roasted garlic. A dozen chairs stood arranged. 11 were occupied. The lone vacant seat was no longer intended for me. Instead, that chair now belonged to Sydney Warwick, my cousin, who was younger, newly arrived, and, in my mother's opinion, superior to me. I lingered at the threshold, hoping someone, anyone, might wish me a happy birthday. No one acknowledged my presence. The only reaction came when my cousin raised her hand with a puzzled gesture. "Oh, you've arrived." My mother, Patricia Warwick, glanced my way, not with affection or remorse, but with a calculating look. "I wasn't expecting you," she said, her tone emotionless. "You weren't actually the reason for this gathering." I managed to keep my voice more composed than I had anticipated as I asked why she was seated in my spot. Duncan kept eating without even looking up. Up until a year ago, I was still on the board. I hadn't been part of it for the past 12 months. My father, Lewis Warwick, had revised the will. "You were supposed to check your emails," but I just stared in confusion. "Which will are you talking about?" There was no response. Sydney reached for the bread basket, carefully avoiding my gaze. My mother, Patricia, remained silent. Instead, my mother poured herself some wine and remarked, "Let's not spoil the night." I left the room still wearing the gold bracelet my father had gifted me at 13. It was the one with "Legacy First" etched onto it. Tears didn't come. That night, I flipped open my laptop and tried to log in to the Warwick Legacy Fund portal. My name came up as an invalid user. The login no longer granted me access. In that instant, I understood they weren't just ignoring me. They had wiped me out of existence. 9 years on, I still didn't have any intention of returning home. Not for the holidays, not for my mother's birthday, not for anything at all. That night found me folding napkins at the rear of a banquet hall in Portland, halfway through a double shift, when my phone vibrated. The subject line read, "Warwick Heritage Gala. Final confirmations." I nearly deleted it. Yet a part of me, maybe out of habit, clicked it open. The message came from patriciawarwicktrust.org. I hadn't encountered that email address in years. Not since back when I was part of the roster. I scrolled down to find a shiny event flyer attached, each headshot smiling back at me, a sea of last names I used to call family. And there in the middle of the second row sat Sydney, dressed in the navy gown my mother, Patricia, used to wear to galas in Sydney's honor, the future director of youth legacy programs. Below her portrait read the quote, "Our family believes in shaping leaders through unity and tradition." A strangled laugh escaped me. My name, unsurprisingly, was missing from the guest list. Not as an honoree, not as a legacy, but something odd did appear in the email footer where they listed past contacts. Marin W. archived mailing list. Someone had checked the wrong box. Somebody hadn't shut a door properly. I pressed print, creased the flyer, tucked it in my purse like a piece of evidence, and that evening, I reopened a document I had ignored for years. There were snapshots, legal agreements, stipulations, lists of people, and a folder titled, "What They Overlooked." Within that, I stumbled onto something more valuable than simple proof. There was an unsigned stipulation from Evelyn's trust that still included my name. They removed me from the celebration, but neglected to remove me from where the real authority lay. I sat perched on my bed, still wearing my catering outfit, clutching the printed flyer as though it could give something back to me. It had no obligation to me. Neither did those people. For a long time, I convinced myself the past was finished, that the choice was theirs, and I had taken my own path. I got by, forged my own way, and kept quiet. Yet I was unable to ignore what the flyer demanded. Sydney's grin seemed to sear through the paper as if she understood. I rifled through the manila folder I kept hidden beneath my mattress. My roommate, Hallie Rhodes, once asked if it was a stack of old tax forms. That wasn't exactly it. Inside were digital copies, handwritten annotations, screenshots of trust paperwork from before my access was revoked. There was also a snapshot of me with my grandmother, Evelyn Warwick, the last person to speak my name without discomfort. And at the very bottom, a letter. This envelope was addressed to Miss Marin Elise Warwick from Warwick and Fenley Solicitors, postmarked 8 years earlier and still sealed. My fingers shook as I ripped it open. Inside was a proposed amendment for the trust. There were 2 drafts, one deleting my name and another that did not. Both were marked as not final. I knew I should have shut the folder. Sleep would have been the wiser choice. But then my phone vibrated. The caller was an unfamiliar number. They're about to announce Sydney Warwick as successor at the Warwick Heritage Gala. My name is still tucked away in the legal files. I thought I deserved my own say before they cover that up as well. Thomas Granger stared back at the monitor. I hadn't heard the name Thomas Granger since I was 17. Thomas Granger, who used to be our family's accountant, was let go the same year I disappeared. That was the instant the quiet was broken. They assumed that paperwork would be enough to hide me. But there are some ghosts you can't forget. Some ghosts keep evidence. I made it to Maine just as the sun was rising. That used to mean more to me. Things like family ski vacations, holiday cards, traditions. But this time, the light was only sharp and icy through a broken windshield, and my host had left the key beneath a stone. I hadn't told anyone about my arrival. I didn't need to. The land itself still held my memory, even if everyone else tried to erase it. Instead of heading directly to the hotel hosting the gala, I drove to a modest place at the edge of Rossmore Lake, Evelyn's lake house, which belonged to my grandmother, Evelyn Warwick. By law, it now belonged to the trust, but nobody set foot there. No one had since she passed. They weren't able to sell it. She had included a curious stipulation in her will. No one could alter the house unless they knew exactly where the frame with the broken glass was. I knew the answer. It hung in the hallway, second picture from the left, just above the antique mirror. In that photo, it was the 2 of us. I was 8 years old, grasping Evelyn Warwick's hand while wearing her pearls. The back of the frame had a crack, and hidden there, carefully secured with tape, was a folded slip of paper. If you are reading this, someone has tried to write you out, but you are still a Warwick, and nobody else gets to decide who keeps this name. Tucked with the letter was a tiny brass key and an original version of the Warwick Legacy Fund, unrevised, before everything was changed. My own name appeared, clear, official, unchanged. I, Marin Elise Warwick, was listed second as a beneficiary, a direct descendant. They assumed I would lose track of my identity. They hadn't counted on my return to the only person who never made me feel like I had to provide evidence. They never anticipated the trail of documents she had left in her wake. And they certainly didn't think I would recall exactly where everything began. I wasn't looking for just any new dress. I needed that specific dress. The one my mother, Patricia Warwick, had worn to cut the ribbon on the Warwick Heritage Trust's very first building. The same dress from the newspaper article that once hung in my childhood bedroom, before it was swapped for photos of Sydney Warwick. Deep midnight blue, floor skimming, an understated neckline, every seam radiating quiet authority. My search led me to an upscale vintage consignment shop in town. When I pulled it from the back of a rack, the owner let out a gasp. "Oh, this is an original piece. It used to belong to the Warwick family." I gave her a gentle smile. "Yes, I know." I didn't correct her when she insisted the dress had been Sydney's grandmother's, because in a way that was true. but it belonged to me now. I took a room for myself at a modest inn located a couple of blocks away from the Warwick Heritage Gala site. I didn't use the valet or bother with anything resembling VIP treatment. My entrance wouldn't be the one everyone expected. I reached out for a small favor, calling a makeup artist I'd once poured wine for at a Portland charity event. She remembered me and was happy to repay the debt. Under her touch, I was transformed into a memory, timeless and familiar, like the kind of face you might find in an old photograph tucked away in a drawer, never discarded. Before heading out, I placed 2 items inside my clutch: a printed copy of the trust clause listing my name, and a note Evelyn Warwick had written to me. My final look in the mirror wasn't about vanity. It was to bid farewell to the self that once believed staying quiet was safest. That evening, I wasn't searching for reconciliation. I was after the microphone. I entered the Warwick Heritage Gala at 7:41 p.m. I didn't go in through the main entrance, but slipped in through the staff door. A server held the door open for me. He never asked for my name. He simply gazed at me with the confidence that I must belong somewhere important, though he couldn't quite place where. That was exactly what I intended. The ballroom was all pristine deception. Crystal lights gleamed above, golden accents bordered pristine tablecloths, and visitors toasted with champagne as they praised each other's family histories. I moved soundlessly between the tables, almost ephemeral. No badge displayed my name, and I had no assigned place, yet people watched me. Some attendees narrowed their eyes, clearly trying to figure out how they might know me, maybe from past school days, or perhaps from an old article. When I reached the sign-in table, I picked up a program for the Warwick Heritage Gala and began to skim through it. 3 full pages were devoted to those being honored that night. Sydney Warwick had an entire section of her own, described as an emerging leader, a guide, and bearer of an inherited mission. My name remained absent. That was expected, really. Then my attention was drawn to the legacy display, a corridor covered in portraits of the Warwick lineage spanning 3 generations. Founders, benefactors, and family photos lined the walls. I moved through them at a slow pace, taking in each picture one at a time. My mother was pictured as a young adult. My siblings and Sydney Warwick appeared in her prep school attire. Suddenly, my attention landed on something unusual. A single frame sat just a bit uneven. The metal label read, "Warwick Children, 2009 Family Day." But something wasn't right about the image within. The left side was strangely empty. I examined it more closely. Whoever had edited it had removed me entirely. I could still faintly see the original beneath the glass in the back. Tucked gently behind that photo, I found the true version. This was the complete picture, and I was right in the middle. Yet someone had marked a red X over my face. I didn't let myself cry. Instead, I took a photo for evidence and slid the USB stick into the audio-visual laptop behind the stage curtain. If their plan was to erase me from the event, I would tell my own story instead. There's a saying that every gala has its turning point. For me, that moment began at 8:19 p.m. Sydney Warwick had just taken the stage, clad in ivory satin and commanding my family's full focus. Clapping swept through the ballroom, proper and restrained like distant thunder. The announcer drew closer to the microphone. This evening, we celebrate a rising generation, someone with elegance, foresight, and the Warwick name shining bright. The house lights faded for a tribute video. But this was not the video anyone was anticipating. Rather than my cousin's carefully crafted highlight reel, the monitors flashed briefly and then went dark. My voice swept through the space, steady, unmistakable, resolute. A few of you remember who I am. Several among you received instructions to put me out of your minds. Faces swiveled toward me. A handful of guests audibly gasped. The rest simply fixed their eyes on me in silence. My name is Marin Elise Warwick. I entered life as part of this family. I grew up right here in this very hall. I shared meals at that table, wore the treasured bracelet, won the scholarship, before being erased altogether. On the display behind me, the original family portrait appeared, unaltered, and there I was in the middle, smiling, alive. Then the revised version, edited and censored, was shown. A low hum of whispers moved through the crowd. Next came the reading of the trust papers. My identity and my legal standing were presented plainly, unmarked, legitimate, and still in force. I moved to the edge of the platform, the stage lighting highlighting the deep blue of my gown, which belonged to my mother, Patricia Warwick. It is not possible to erase a person while trying to preserve what they leave behind. A child cannot be silenced and call it harmony. No one can pretend that tradition stands on a foundation of deception. At first, only one person in the audience applauded, but soon several others joined in. Sydney Warwick was motionless, her hands shaking as she gripped her speech notes. My mother, Patricia Warwick, sat rigidly, gripping her drink so tightly her knuckles turned white. As for me, I didn't stand by for approval. I simply delivered the words I meant to say. I'm not trying to claim anything here. My purpose is to remind all of you. It belonged to me from the beginning. Sometimes, an absence of sound can convey more than cheers ever could. After my words faded, emptiness settled over the entire ballroom. Everyone stood motionless. Not a single glass clinked. A glass sat before me, untouched, and no one attempted to break the tension with a forced laugh or a phony cough. The silence hung until my mother, Patricia Warwick, rose to her feet. She moved without haste, flowing forward as if the narrative still belonged to her, giving off the air that nothing could wrest control away from her. My mother came up alongside Sydney Warwick, resting one palm on the podium and the other clutching her string of pearls. "Marin, sweetheart," my mother murmured, in a tone both soft as velvet and edged with fragility. "This isn't the proper setting." I caught her gaze without looking away. So where was the right setting through all these years? Patricia pressed her smile into place with habitual precision. "Let's wait and speak after the event. There's no need to draw attention now." "But the attention's already here," I told her. "You simply never thought I'd be the one making an appearance in it." On the screen behind us, the document bearing those unmistakable legal markings, and my name, remained on display, glaring for everyone to see. Then, an unexpected sound split the moment. One chair scraped across the floor as a man rose at the back of the room. It was Thomas Granger, once our accountant, known to everyone as Thomas. Once, he was the accountant, sent away after he began probing too deeply. Holding a folder up, he declared, "The trust's records speak for themselves, though people can be deceptive, and I made sure to keep duplicates." My mother, Patricia, went pale. Sydney lashed out, insisting, "This is defamation. She's just here for the spotlight." I stood steady. I'm present for honesty. The spotlight only follows where that goes. A woman from the crowd rose to her feet. Next, a man by the entrance did the same. Finally, applause began to spread once more. The applause wasn't meant for Sydney this time, and it wasn't meant for heritage. This round, it honored something else. This time, it was in support of justice. Files now replaced the comfort of embraces, and justice spoke through records and the passage of time, never with an apology, only with the gavel's certainty. The morning after the gala, my phone rang 4 times before I even managed to pour myself a cup of coffee. A call from an unfamiliar number, which went to voicemail, over and over. By midday, I'd counted 11 missed calls. Of those, 9 were from my mother, Patricia. The first message began with civility. "Marin, it's your mother. Let's not let... Last night spiraled out of control. The following day, I still couldn't grasp the weight of everything that had been put on us. My father, Lewis Warwick, believed that his decision would benefit all involved. By the sixth message, his words had fractured. "You're not the only person who suffered, you know." I chose not to answer. Instead, my sister, Morgan Warwick, reached out with her own message. No introduction, no justification, just a PDF attached. A cease and desist letter arrived. Apparently, even trying to reclaim who I am was now considered defamatory. My cousin Sydney Warwick preferred not to go through the courts. She turned to Instagram instead. She posted an image of herself dressed head to toe in white, with the caption, "Legacy isn't taken, it's achieved. We rise, not plead." Warwick strong. The post received thousands of likes. There was also a carefully highlighted comment. "Strange how certain people only show up when there's money at stake." That came from Sydney Warwick, but the details no longer mattered because less than a day later, a nameless folder surfaced on a shared drive. Inside, Warwick Heritage Gala materials, internal email chains, documentation of expenses, reports, grant approvals. Sydney Warwick's name appeared on invoices associated with creative development consultants who weren't real. Somebody had unearthed the secrets, and it wasn't me. Thomas Granger, or someone like him, had started the whole thing. I didn't have to protest. All I had to do was stay put and let their fire burn unhindered. Meanwhile, in the distance, my mother's 12th voicemail played. "Please, Marin, there are talks of an investigation. You can bring this to a halt." I hit play, then immediately deleted it. When I was 17, I used to scrawl my own name in journals as a reminder that it belonged to me. Marin Elise Warwick. Not her. Not that person whose name is never spoken. Not a sentence to be erased in crimson ink. Only myself. 9 years later, I officially registered that name. The Marin Initiative. Not Warwick. Not in association with just Marin, a nonprofit created for young women whose families erased them, left them homeless, disinherited, or simply cast aside. The site launched online exactly 1 week after the Warwick Heritage Gala. I declined the board position they offered me. I ignored the public statement they circulated, which said, "The Warwick family is undergoing internal realignment." I also chose not to reply to the note from the family attorney suggesting a revised trust. That board seat was never my goal. What I really wanted was for the silence that followed my name to feel like strength, not retribution. I removed the key to Evelyn's lake house and slipped it onto a chain to wear around my neck. I repurchased the home, not as a member of the Warwick family, but as an ordinary individual. After that, I uploaded a single picture to the Marin Initiative's homepage, a golden bracelet. It was the bracelet my father, Lewis, gave me on my 13th birthday, engraved with "Legacy First." Beneath this I typed, "Some legacies are crafted out of silence. Others are taken back with fire." There were no comments, no hashtags, no images of people. Nothing but those words, because names can be stolen. Still, identity is something I have to earn for myself. And instead of quietly earning my place through politeness, I claimed it by enduring being erased and declaring my existence more boldly than they ever imagined I would. 1 month after the Warwick Heritage Gala, the Warwick Heritage Trust unveiled a brand new emblem. There wasn't any mention of my name in the press, nor was there an apology, only a rebranding. They preferred the term realignment. Sydney Warwick quietly resigned. There was no controversy, only an announcement about her focusing on her own goals. My mother, Patricia Warwick, offered an exclusive to the main Heritage Journal. Dressed in a soft blue outfit, she sat in her formal living space and with a trembling smile told them, "Family is complicated, but we're healing. We've always been a family that heals." I remained silent and let her words go unchallenged. I didn't put out any statements. I felt no urge to speak further. I had already left. I wasn't missing or erased, just out of their grasp. They were free to keep the Warwick name. I felt no desire to be connected to a title shared with those individuals. I wore it like a shield, all the while quietly honing my defenses behind it. My name, Marin, carried significance again, and it meant even more without their presence. I handed Evelyn's pearls to a young woman named Callie Monroe, a recipient from the inaugural round of the Marin Initiative scholarships. She addressed me as Ms. Warwick. I responded with a smile and gently shook my head. Just Marin. That was the part they never truly understood. I never desired the crown. I had no need for their place among the decision-makers. I didn't crave recognition echoing through halls of marble or approval from the past. What mattered most was reclaiming my own voice. Now that it was mine, I had no reason to raise it. Even a whisper was enough. The walls would retain the sound. The Warwick Heritage Gala drifted into memory. The plaque with my name was replaced. The media lost interest and turned to other stories. But the quiet, that remained. It wasn't the silence they used as a weapon, but the one I chose for myself. Some nights, I still startle awake believing I'm just 17, thinking that if I knock on the kitchen door, someone will answer me, but no one ever does. That's all right, though, since I've realized I no longer need that door to be open. Instead, I constructed a new entryway for myself. Just last week, I spoke at a nearby university. It wasn't some flashy TED stage, just a humble lecture hall with folding seats and young women scribbling in their notebooks as if every word truly mattered. One of them raised her hand, a little nervous but radiating curiosity. She asked me how I managed to forgive them. I hesitated for a moment, then answered honestly. I hadn't forgiven them. All I did was stop waiting for them to define me. That had always been the real issue. I was considered too outspoken to be compliant, yet too soft-spoken to actually be heard, and ultimately too much trouble for anyone to want me nearby. So, they spun a narrative in which I was completely absent. For a time, I accepted that silence. Yet even silence runs out eventually. When my moment came, it arrived in the form of someone wearing navy blue, standing beneath a chandelier, clutching papers they believed would remain hidden away. People accused me of being resentful. After that, I was labeled as daring. Yet, none of them ever addressed me by my actual name. They only spoke it when I demanded they say it out loud. So this is it. My name is Marin Elise Warwick. And this was the final word they never expected to hear from me. I had been written out of their story, so I returned to deliver it myself.